The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.
Hello, Philippines. This is LeCain with World News Jam. We bring you the most interesting stories from around the world each week. We just don't give you the news, but we tell you the story behind the news, as well as read and answer your questions in an entertaining and easy to understand way. So please join us on DZRJ 810 AM Radio Bandito TV and get yourself updated with all the interesting news of the week from around the world right here on DZRJ's World News Jam.
Watch and listen to World News Jam, Saturdays, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Airing on Sky Cable Channel 224 and on all DTT boxes. Simulcasting online on Facebook and YouTube. Listen and watch on your mobile devices. Just search DZRJ Radio Bandito.
Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam here on DZRJ and Radio Bandito TV. My name is LeCain, and I'm joined with 𝗪cie𝗿𝗋𝗀.
Hello, Philippines, and hello, world.
𝗪cie𝗿𝗋𝗀 is our on-staff psychologist. Going to help us get through the show today. Now, here on the Jam, of course, we talk about stories that are going on around the world, stuff that's happened in the world, so you can be, as we say during this time of year, smarter at your Christmas parties. And so when your uncle starts going on and on and on about how much he knows about the world, you can jump in and say stuff that
Right.
hopefully makes him look like he doesn't know what he's talking about. But anyway, I thought what we would start out with today is something that was a bit of a shock to me, and that's what occurred in Syria last week.
Right.
And that has just been all over every news. That is the biggest story of the week. And we talk about Syria quite a bit here on the show, mostly because we spend a lot of time talking about the Middle East. Especially throughout the years with the way the government is run there and the things that they have done. Now, the government there, the al-Assad family, they've been running Syria for, 50 years,
Right.
I think. And they run it, they rule it, they run it a lot like what reminds me of Saddam Hussein used to do in Iraq, or maybe even North Korea under Kim Jong-un. In other words, it ain't that easy a place to live. It's brutal. It's very poor. It's a harsh country to live in. And anything you do not want to do when you're in Syria is say something negative about the government.
Right.
Because they have a secret police there that will snatch you and put you in a prison, and no one will ever see you again. In fact, at one time, and we talked about this on the show, they released poisonous gas on their own citizens. Mm-hmm. A lot of people got killed from that. But what happened last week was quite a shock. Now, they've been going through, and we've talked about this time and time again, about the civil war going on in Syria. And that's been, about 13 years it's been going on. The rebels finally have overthrown the president's regime. So it's amazing as to how they did it. The fact that al-Assad, who has control of the military there, which is, it's quite a military, because they have a lot of help from the Russians, and and so I think it was on Sunday, and they worked their way through to the city of Damascus, and they liberated it. And this all started actually, I believe, a week before with the rebel coalition, Hayat Tahrir Assam. You ever heard that name before? That's the HTS. They took Aleppo first, which is the largest city in the country. And then the military of Syria, together with the allies, the Russians, they flew all these things trying to bomb the rebels, but the rebels kept advancing and advancing and advancing. And before you know it, they were in the capital. And before you knew it, they were in the presidential palace.
Right.
And if you've been watching the videos, Nara,
It reminded me kind of like deja vu here.
Yeah,
Storming the palace.
It was a
People in
lot.
the palace.
It was a lot like they stormed in the palace and they saw like the opulence
Yes.
and the riches and everything that was in the palace. And you know what they did when they got to the palace? They took everything. They went in. The car collection was unbelievable.
Right.
Like some beautiful cars. He had like so many cars, and they came in and just stole everything. They just stole everything.
Looted everything.
There was nothing left in that place. Now, a lot of people are talking about al-Assad. He got out of the country in time, fled to Russia. So he's in Moscow right now, though we don't know exactly sure where. But after they got everything, I mean, the interesting thing that we have to look at now is, who is it that's going to run Syria? Is it going to be the HTS? Is it going to be a spinoff of the past government? Is there going to be a newly elected new government? And I bet that's one of the big questions that we have to ask now, because this is big. This is a big issue on who's going to run the next government.
Right. Yeah. I think the thing with Syria is like, will the rebels, right? It was fast. This was like they said in the news that it was just he was overthrown quickly.
I mean,
I was
it was like
a shocked. They were trying and trying for 13 years. And then all of a sudden, it was like...
one day you're watching TV,
Yeah.
and then they said, oh, the rebels are getting... I'm like, yeah, okay, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's a weekly thing. And then all of a sudden they said, al-Assad is gone.
Yeah.
That he up and left the country.
Right.
So I'm going to turn on our device here. This is everybody is now trying to figure out, they're trying to figure out what to do next. I mean, the United States, of course, is trying to get involved, and they're trying to help them say, okay, listen, because what they don't want to happen, the HTS is like a terrorist organization.
Yeah. They're rebels for a reason.
I mean, they're a tough bunch of hombres,
Right.
Islamic extremists, and a lot of them don't like each other. But they banded together to go up against the al-Assad government. So now that that they've won, now one of them's got to come and be the leader. And who's going to be the one to decide that? Yeah. And I know the United States is really, what you need to do is you need to have an interim government, and then of course you need to have free and fair elections, and we need to, Syria needs to become a democratic country. How easy is that going to be to do that?
Yeah. That's not that easy, and there will be power vacuum for sure.
Yeah. I mean, this first couple of weeks, the interim government, I mean, right now, the fact that the HTS has taken over, and then the fact that a lot of those people within the HTS are fighting each other. So now that for sure there's going to be a power struggle between that. But there's been some interesting things. I mean, when this happened, I mean, one of the big things in Syria is all the prisoners. They have so many prisons in Syria because you speak out against the government, you're in prison for life. And so the prisons were full. So they opened up the prisons and let everybody out.
Right.
And one person that they let out was particularly interesting was this guy named 𝗪cie𝗪. And he's a guy that was actually a lawyer before in the United States. And he went on a pilgrimage to Syria. Whatever. So anyway, he went on a pilgrimage to Syria. He walked in Syria from Lebanon. And what do you think happened? They grabbed him and put him in a prison. Right. He's an American just walking around, talking about his religion in Syria. And so they grabbed him, put him in a prison, and nobody heard from him again. And it seems that somebody from one of the news organizations in the United States saw him just walking down the street.
Right.
Like after this whole thing, he was barefooted, just walking down the street in a daze. And so they grabbed him. And, it turns out that he said he was sitting in his prison cell where he's been for the last, 11 months or something. And a couple of guys with AK-47s broke the door in and then just walked out. and he just kind of wandered out of the prison with everybody else. And they were thinking about like trying to find their way to Jordan. But you know, a lot of prisoners now are just like walking the streets. They don't know where to go, trying to find their way out because everybody's worried. Everybody's worried that Syria will now be overtaken by somebody else that's just as bad. So, you know, a lot of the people that are in jail are political prisoners. So they're trying to, you know, thinking about, well, maybe we should cross over in Jordan. But this guy, it's just funny. He was, you know, it wasn't that long ago. He was in a law firm in Chicago. And then he took a trip to Budapest in May. And then in June, he decided to just walk into Syria on a pilgrimage. And they snatched him.
Wow. I was watching the footage of their trying to... they were looking for this red section supposed to be in one of the infamous prisons. And they were like, wow. I was like, is it there? Is it there? Like, they couldn't even find it. It's supposed to be that notorious section.
You know,
right?
It's supposed to be hundreds of those places. And they got people all around. Supposedly the guy, Austin Tice, who is the journalist who they snatched back in 2012. And a lot of people think he's still alive. You know, if you can't find him. I mean, if you haven't seen somebody in like, you know, close to 10 years, I don't know if they're still alive, but I know that they are looking for him. He's somebody that was taken like over 10 years ago. And then there's a whole nother side of this thing that we haven't talked about, and that is Israel.
Right.
You know, once they came in and, you know, took over the country, basically ran Bashir out of the country, Israel decided, oh, it's time for us to get involved. And so they bombed Syria 480 separate times in 2 days.
Really? 2
days they went in and just bombed with jet fighters and drones and so forth. You know, they say that Israel is saying that they destroyed the entire Syrian Navy overnight. Once they heard it. It's kind of funny because Israel has not really done this kind of thing in quite a while. And all of a sudden these rebels go in, they overthrow the government, and then Israel goes, oh, here's our time. And then they go in and just blow the whole city up. It seems to be what Israel is kind of good at. And so I think that, you know, Israel, what they're seeing is they want to have a part in who decides who the new government is in Syria.
Right. Who are the allies there in that area? I mean, like, who are the allies of Syria? I know Russia is.
Russia, Iran.
Iran, yeah.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, when that issue first started, you know, when Hezbollah got involved, and all of a sudden a missile shot from Syria, and then they're part of this whole thing. You know, everybody there is against Israel. You know, everybody, but Israel has like the most technologically amazing army, even though they're the smallest country, or one of the smallest countries. Yeah. So what they are saying there in Israel, or Netanyahu said, I think it was Thursday or Friday, said the collapse of the Syrian regime is a direct result of severe blows with which we have struck Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. So what he's saying is, well, the reason that the rebels were able to do this is because of them. So it's typical of Netanyahu. He went on to say, the Axis has not yet disappeared, but as I promised, we are changing the face of the Middle East. So that's Netanyahu's idea on this. And what I think he is saying, or one of the things that they have said in this last week, is they bombed Syria because they had to. It's the same excuse they use a lot of the time. They bombed because they had to. They didn't want the weapons of Syria to get in the wrong hands. So, you know, they had to go in and take it out. But I think right now, I mean, there's no way that nobody knows this for sure, but people say that Israeli troops have already passed through the buffer zone and into Syria. And if that has happened, and I'm sure probably by, I would say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we will find out for sure if the Israeli troops are on the ground. And that means that Israel is truly trying to change the face of the Middle East by making sure that they have pro-Israeli
Troops,
people in the new, and troops in the new government. So I think that's,
something to watch for, I think, yeah.
And I understand that Israel doesn't want the new government that's going to declare war on Israel.
Yeah.
And I mean, that could happen.
Right, yeah.
That could easily, I mean, it depends on who gets in charge there. And it, as they have said, it could be somebody way worse than al-Bashar. So I'm sure, there's other things involved too. I mean, of course, there's corruption and money. They found, when they were going through like all these different places and secret hideouts, they found this place, and they were looking at behind the wall or something. They found what seemed to be like the most sophisticated drug trade operation they had ever seen. Just so many drugs. What's it called? 𝗡𝗲𝗄, which is a drug to methamphetamine, and they discovered it in massive quantities. And they're saying that this is the drug that has overtaken the Middle East, and it's the drug of choice in Saudi Arabia. And they found this thing with they were selling copper coils, like boxes and boxes and boxes of copper coils, and in the copper coils is where they were hiding the drugs. And they found all this stuff, and this is like $1 billion business, and supposedly it's run by Bashar al-Assad's brother. So there's a lot of things involved here. Who's going to take over that business? Yeah. And I'm sure, I'm sure this is, it's going to be interesting. Other things that they found when they found this whole room full of fake $100 bills, where they were trying to make $100 bills. They found fake Viagra pills. They found all these businesses that they had going on there. So I don't know. I just it's such an interesting story that we're living through this, that in our lifetime, that they were able to take this guy down, and the fact that it happened so quickly that you can see now how in some of these countries why they do the things that al-Bashar, he's been ruling his people with an iron fist for so long, worrying about this happening, and then it happened to him. Yeah. So I'm assuming he probably has a nice hotel room there in Moscow, so he's probably not doing so. I'm not sure what's going to happen to that, but that's going to be an interesting thing to find out. But moving on, one of the other things that's interesting this week's kind of a play from last week. Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
What a great name that is.
Luigi.
Mangione. Anybody know who that guy is? That it's got those great names. It rolls off the tongue. He's the guy that we've all been looking for all week. He's the killer of that.
The CEO, right?
The CEO of United Healthcare, the big insurance guy there in the middle of Manhattan, who was shot in the back, and died right before they can get to the hospital. And the guy that shot him just got on a bike and rode into Central Park and disappeared. And they've been looking for this guy, and they didn't know where to find him. They're trying to, get all these clues. They were giving out awards if anybody had seen him, trying to figure out like where he had just been, how he got there, how he got the gun, all these kind of things, trying to figure out. And where did they find him? He was eating in McDonald's.
Yeah.
Man, I got to tell you, if you just killed a guy and you're right now the subject of the biggest manhunt in the United States, I don't know if I would go have lunch at McDonald's. Supposedly he was eating one of those breakfast potato things. That's the picture they have. They have a picture of on the video.
Hash browns.
Eating hash browns. So anyway, what had happened was he was in McDonald's and somebody saw him. Now, I don't know how anybody could say that's the guy from the picture that they had him, because they only have like half his face. But
the backpack would
they had hundreds and hundreds of calls. People say, "Oh, I saw this guy," because he looks like there's a lot of Luigis out there that look just like that. He looks like a Luigi. I mean, a lot of guys, he doesn't have any particular odd look about it. He just looks like a regular guy. So anyway, somebody called in, the police came over and they started questioning him. And as the more that they questioned him, the more nervous he got. And finally the police were like, oh, something's wrong here. Especially because they kept asking his name and he kept giving the wrong name.
Right.
And I mean, everything he did was just stupid. I have to say, he probably could have got away with this because if they don't catch you in the first 24 hours, it's hard to catch you. And, he'd been on the run for a while. I don't know. If it was me, I probably would have hid out in a trash can for a couple of months or something. But they got him there. And, that now they're starting to look into this guy and to find out that he's like just a normal guy.
Right.
Not anything special. People were thinking that maybe because everybody in the United States hates the insurance companies.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody. I don't know one person that would say, you know what, I love my insurance company.
Right.
Everybody hates them.
Hate them.
Because, medical costs in the United States are at a ridiculous level. Mm-hmm. And the hospitals all have deals with the insurance companies. And, it's all about making money. It's how much money can we make? Yeah. And even though we can fix what ails you, if you're not in the right place, if your doctor is not on our service or, we will deny you. Even though we could fix you, we're going to deny you because you don't have the right insurance. And we hear this story all the time, over and over again. So a lot of people are like, hey, maybe this insurance guy deserved it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, supposedly this guy, Luigi, he had a back problem, a very intense back issue. And people say that might have been the reason, being that he had an operation and had screws put in his spine, and that might be have something to do with it. His mother said actually that she reported him missing just 4 days before the killing, because he just went off the face of the earth. But when they took his knapsack and they looked into it, that's pretty much.
Yeah, that was the.
I don't know if like I said, if I was him, I might have gotten rid of some of the stuff. I might have gotten rid of my notebook, or I wrote about how
manifesto.
You hate corporate America, and you specifically hate the healthcare industry, and all your fake IDs. You might want to get rid of the gun that you use. That might be an incriminating thing to have there. So, and the clothing and the face mask that they found in the that was the same one from the video. I mean, I don't know what was going through this guy's mind, but they have taken him in. Now, he has pleaded not guilty. Okay. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's what you do. But boy, it looks like they got the right guy.
Right, yeah.
They caught him in Pennsylvania, though. So they've got him on forgery and firearms without a license, possessing instruments of crime. But they can't get him for murder because he didn't commit murder in Pennsylvania. So they got to extradite him to New York. But he's fighting the extradition, which in what world is that ever going to work? Mm-hmm. I don't even know. I don't even know why they're fighting it, because that's never going to go anywhere. Right. But when they took him into court, he shouted that what was happening to him was an insult to the intelligence of the American people. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what makes a guy who's a regular, normal guy, maybe has a decent job, all of a sudden become this way.
Right. I mean, if you look at his background, he's not. I mean, he has things going for him. He was like a valedictorian.
Yeah.
He studied in a good school.
That is true. He had a good family.
Yeah.
Good family. Supposedly he has a problem with. He was saying that the United States ranks 42nd in the world for life expectancy, yet they have the most expensive healthcare system in the world. But these are things that supposedly they got out of his thing, that the United States healthcare system is basically just for immense profit, corruption and greed. He put all these things in there, which, by the way, I would have burned if I had every police in the country looking for me. But I just often wondered, like, what possesses a guy that has a life like that to go to such extremes, as to, you know, to make a point. But
write a manifesto.
And writing a manifesto, and then going and committing murder in the middle of Manhattan. I mean,
Then going to McDonald's.
And then, what did he think? You know, what did he think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Did he think he was going to change the healthcare system? But what's really fascinating about this is a lot of people are on his side.
Exactly. Yeah. People are donating to GoFundMe.
Yeah, there's a GoFundMe page.
It was $10,000 the last time I looked, but it might have been more. $10,000.
And they're making T-shirts that say "Deny, Delay, Depose," which is what he wrote on the bullets before he shot. It's just fascinating that you know, the United States, a lot of people in the United States
hate healthcare.
Hate healthcare so much that they're supporting this guy that killed. Now, the guy that he killed was no saint.
Right.
We talked about that last week. He's a guy that made $10 million a year. You know, he was, you know,
denying 32%
he denied all those people. So he was not the nicest guy ever, and he deserved a little something. But I just, you know, it's one of those things, an interesting story of what makes, and a lot of people are saying that this is going to be the future of America. These kind of political type assassinations, they believe, are going to get even worse over the next year. So we will wait and see if that is true. But seeing things that happen all over the world, around a country, you know, before last week we were talking about South Korea, and that there was a possibility that they were going to have martial law.
Right.
And for about, 2 hours? It seems like they might.
Martial law.
They had martial law. But then they got in, were able to, you know, the government was able to come in. But right now, the president, I just want to breathe, it's just a follow-up on this thing. The president is saying, you know, they brought down the martial law. The military is, you know, now starting to say, you know what, we backed you before, but you lost. So now we're not going to back you so much anymore. And even the people from his own party are not backing him anymore.
Right.
And they're saying, listen, why don't you just step down, back away quietly, and let us just, you know, move on. And he's not going to. He's like, no, I'm staying. So this may be a big thing in Korea. We may be hearing about this for a while. And one of the last places we needed this is Korea.
It's Korea.
So.
Yeah, because their nearest neighbor will rejoice.
I know. I mean, and what he's saying is that the opposition party is cohorting with the North Koreans with no proof. With no proof of that. But the party leader from his own party said suspending the president from his duties through impeachment is the only way for now to defend democracy and the republic. I don't know, it kind of reminds me of the Nixon years.
Yeah.
I don't want to go on about Richard Nixon, but it's kind of the way it came that Richard Nixon vowed he was not going to step down. And then his own party said, listen, you know, there's nothing we can do. We're all turning against you. You need to go. And Yoon, the president, said that I don't know which country the party belongs to and which country the National Assembly belongs to, but he's saying it doesn't matter because he's not. They're going to have to, you know, drag him out. That he is not going to quit. He said they were talking about that he was trying to go after the National Assembly. He said, if I were to paralyze the functions of the National Assembly, I wouldn't have enforced martial law on a weekend. You know, or would have done it on a weekend, not on a weekday. He said he would have cut the power, he would have cut the water, he would have closed the Parliament building down, restricted broadcasting, all these things he would have did. But he didn't do that. He said, I didn't do that. I was just trying to do what was right for my country.
He actually mentioned those things that he could have done.
Yeah, I could have done this.
Thinking that to inspire confidence, right?
You know, who's to say if this thing would have gone on for more than 2 hours, then
he would not have done those things.
You know, he says that he has pledged to fight until the last moment with the people. And he says, I apologize again to the people who might have been surprised and nervous due to the short-lived martial law. But please trust in my passionate loyalty for you, the people. So there you go. maybe what you needs is to talk to Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is on a tear this week, pardoning people. One of the big stories this week is, of course, last week we talked about Joe Biden because he pardoned his own son, which, I don't know, it didn't seem that bad to me. Yeah. But this week he pardoned 39 other people and commuted the sentences of 1,500 others, the largest single clemency ever done by a president in history. And he said America was built on the promise and possibility of second chances.
Right. I actually looked up last week how many presidents in the U.S. did clemency, right, or pardons, and he had quite a low number until now.
Until now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he had almost none until now. Yeah. I mean, a lot of presidents, they do this, right at the end of their tenure. Yeah. But and you look at the people that he pardoned, and I looked at them. I looked at the list, and the people that he pardoned, a lot of them are well-educated, non-violent offenders. Mostly are like, for marijuana, stuff like that. There was nothing like that jumped out at me like, oh, why did he pardon that guy? It was like, oh, I see. At one time in the United States, in different states, whatever, there might have been a mandatory sentence of like 20 years for smoking a joint, something stupid like that. And now the laws have completely changed. Right. And so it's like, all right, we need to commute this sentence for whoever this is. And I mean, if you're looking at some of the past pardons that some of the most recent presidents have given, if you look at some of the pardons that Donald Trump gave, there's a huge discrepancy between those type of people and the type of people like maybe that he, like the Paul Manafort, right, the guy that tried to hide tens of millions of dollars in another country, or Michael Flynn for obstruction and, selling secrets of the U.S. to other countries. I mean, these are the kind of, Scooter Libby, the whole issue that he had with, giving Scooter Libby a pardon. Jared Kushner's father, we talked about that a little bit last week, the guy who set up the camera to get his brother-in-law sleeping with a prostitute. Right. I mean, it's a different level. It's a different level of pardons. But I sort of see, I kind of see why Joe Biden might have done this now. I think that, a lot of it is like, well, we need to do this now because otherwise it's never going to get done. Right. These people, some people that have these enormously long sentences for things that now we don't even, sometimes are not even illegal now. In some states, it's not illegal to smoke marijuana anymore. Yeah. But before, you had a mandatory, sentence of 7 years or 10 years even. So I think that is one of the reasons why I think he might have done this. Now, we wanted to get a little bit to sports this week. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I just think it's such a great story. Because I was living in Cebu, and Cebu's famous for breaking world records. And one of the world records they broke in Cebu when I was there was the largest chess tournament in the world. They had the most people playing chess ever at one time. They broke the Russian record by a ridiculous amount, like huge amount. But anyway, this week in chess, and we've talked about chess a lot on the show because we did a whole piece one time on the fact that people are cheating in chess a lot now. And it's becoming a huge, at the highest level, using technology and stuff like that. But it seems like this was not the case this week, because this week they had the World Chess Championships and an 18-year-old from India won the World Championships. This young kid beat a Chinese guy named Ding. And supposedly it was this incredibly dramatic thing. What's his name? Gukis was the guy's name. And the prize money was $2.5 million. But it just goes to show, I mean, it's just interesting how these days, we're getting younger and younger. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That somebody that's 18 years old, I mean, chess is a lifelong sport. Right. Sometimes it takes an entire life to become a grandmaster. Yeah. And now this kid comes out, wins the world championship at 18 years old. Right.
Yeah. I was talking to some of the national team members before, and they were saying some of the 14-year-old up-and-coming ones are even better, or just like we are afraid of them. We lack of confidence because they're so good. They can beat us in the future, or nearing
I know.
beating us. Yeah.
Gary Kasparov, he's the guy that we all talk about, one of the greatest chess players I think they ever played the game. He was before held the record at 22 years old, but there's a big gap between 18 and 22. Yeah. And so I don't know. I found that so amazing. For me, it's like in the Philippines. These billiard kids, 12 years old, just beating like champions. So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was a great story. And for our technology this week, I wanted to talk a little bit about this thing that I saw, which I think is probably one of the greatest. Who comes up with the best ideas? Japan. Yeah. They always have these great. Anyway, Japan has come up with this great idea, which honestly, if we could bring that to the Philippines,
right,
this would be a great idea. Japan Airlines is now offering something called drop travelers. It's where they will, you buy your ticket, and it's just like getting a seat, paying for luggage, whatever. But this time you pay, and they take your luggage out of the airplane and take it directly to your hotel. And the reason that they're doing this is because, first thing, the Tokyo mass transit system is overcrowded anyway. Mm-hmm. And with people bringing like huge pieces of luggage, other things, it's not working. And, it's clogging up the airports, and, you're having to, the cars and everything that you're having trying to get the luggage in and out. And they have this truck, then they just take the luggage off the airplane. It doesn't even come into it goes around, whatever, they put it on the truck and they take it to your hotel. Wow. And it's there waiting for you at your hotel. So you get on the plane, you pay $30 a bag, mm-hmm. and they take it to wherever you're going.
Wow.
And I just thought, you know what? Such times it's the stupidest ideas that I think are the best ideas. I just found that to be.
Wow. And,
it's a great idea.
If the Philippines proposed that, I would be afraid for my bag.
I know. Yeah, my
bag will never appear. But for the Japanese, I would.
For the Japanese,
and they're very efficient.
They're very efficient. So I just thought, when I read that thing, I'm like, you know what? Because a lot of the tech issues we talk about, about going to a store and you throw what we talked about week before last. You throw your thing in the cart and it automatically tells you how much it costs and keeps your bill, and then you just walk out the store and it automatically charges your card. Right. Some of these things are really super high tech. This is not that high tech.
Yeah.
This is just a good idea
for an honest and efficient country.
Yes, I just thought that was such a great idea.
Yeah.
Now, but this next story, I don't know if this is such a good idea, and I wanted to ask you about it because this week in Australia, and this is something that I think every country needs to look at. In Queensland, they passed a law this week that children as young as the age of 10 are now subject to the exact same penalties in the judicial system as adults. Wow. So if you're 10 and you commit murder or assault or a break-in, you're subject to the exact same laws as an adult. And this is the new Conservative government that is now in Australia. And they what they're saying is that there's community outrage over crimes being perpetuated by young offenders. And they believe that this will act as a deterrent. Now, experts like you have pointed out multiple times through research that tougher penalties do not reduce youth offending. In fact, it sometimes exacerbates it. Mm-hmm. So the United Nations has criticized this, and they're arguing, that this is not a good idea, and it also might even violate international law. But they are saying there at the National Party, which now is, they won the election there in October. They said that they look at the rights of victims ahead of the rights of the criminals. These laws are for every Queenslander who has ever felt unsafe and been a victim of a youth crime across our state. That's one of the premiers at the Parliament there. That he said this past Thursday. Supposedly there is a youth crime wave going on there now, and so they want to make more punitive approach to youth. Is this a good idea?
10 years old, are their minds developed enough to really understand?
Do they understand
Yeah.
what they are doing?
Exactly.
Do
they have no chance to be rehabilitated in other ways than the prisons?
And I know that when I was 10 years old,
and you at 10.
if you put a gun in my hand, I might have shot my sister. I don't know. She did some really bad things to me. She's a really bad thing. It's sometimes you're like, you're just so mad and you probably kill her. I think for a 10-year-old or a 11-year-old or a 12-year-old to plan a crime,
right.
And then go out and perpetuate that crime
and really understand
what they're doing. Yeah. I mean, it's possible. I mean, I guess, there are bad kids, and I've known bad kids. We had bad kids in our school. And they were in trouble since the age of 10. Yeah. I mean, they were already doing bad stuff. Sometimes that's the fault of the parent.
Right.
I gotta say.
The environment. Parent.
But I don't know. I just find that an interesting subject that Australia, I knew, this is one of the things that happens when you vote in a conservative government. And they believe that there's a crime wave of children. I mean, I guess it's possible, but from a psychiatric point of view, I start to fall down on the side of the United Nations.
Right. Same here.
Now, I might change my mind if a 10-year-old came up to me and tried to, and not that hasn't happened to me in the Philippines. Yeah. But I just think that it might be a little extreme that you cannot rehabilitate, that you want to put a 10-year-old in jail for life.
Right.
And that's going to be the best punishment.
Right, yeah. And they have no chance to be a productive citizen of society or anything like that.
And like I said, and it might be the fault of the child, but it might not be.
Yeah.
It might be the environment that the child grew up in.
More complex than just one factor.
So, speaking of committing crimes, who's on the front page of Time magazine this week? This Donald Trump.
Wow.
He's man of the year. Now, who else would it be? I mean, Donald Trump is man of the year for Time magazine. They do this every year. Yeah. They come out. And who was up for, of course, being man of the year was Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. If she had won, I'm sure she would have been on the front cover as well. But you look at what Trump has gone through, the fact that he's had so many criminal cases against him. He is now has a criminal record. He has all these indictments. He's up for, they're trying to figure out a way that they can still charge him for a lot of the crimes that he did, even though he's going to be president. Mm-hmm. In New York right now, the case where he lost, and he has to pay like $400 million. They're gonna make him pay it. Right. So there's a lot of things, but the fact that he came back from that, he came out of that, and then was able to win the presidency. It's enough to make him for Time magazine, to make him man of the year.
Yeah.
So I mean. I this week he rang the bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and a lot of people are saying that the stock market went up this last week. Bitcoin went up. People saying, well, it's because Donald Trump was elected. I mean, the stock market was already kind of moving up anyway, but could be. But it's just been interesting that he was elected, even though he had all these problems. His criminal charges against him.
Right. And in the U.S., I was going to ask you, you don't have immunity for the president. Like in some other countries they do, right? They don't have blanket immunity?
Now, we have immunity if you are president.
Okay.
This has been an interesting thing in the United States is now they took it to the Supreme Court and they said, well, if you do these certain crimes and you're not the president, and the Supreme Court said, well, okay, well, here's what we're going to say is that they were saying that some of the stuff that he did while he was president was not an official act of the president. And so what the Supreme Court came out and said was, well, it doesn't matter what he does, he's immune. So if he kills somebody,
Stole documents, whatever.
well, he did
Stole
that. He actually did that.
Yeah.
But if he were to kill someone, or he ordered the SEAL team, which is the part of the United States military that does assassinations, if he ordered them to kill somebody who is on the opposition,
Right.
he couldn't be charged.
Wow.
In other words, you can do anything now as president, according to the Supreme Court. So in that case, but what they were saying was some of the crimes that he committed before he became president and some of the crimes that he did after he was president. So anything after you're president and everything before you're president is fair game.
Yeah.
And so this has been a wishy-washy sliding
It's a
board.
weird timeline, right? Before he was president, he became president, then he stopped being president. Now he's going to be president again. It's kind of weird timeline there.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting how all this plays out. And one of the big things that happened this week with Trump, besides the fact that he's man time of the year, was one of the main things that he ran on was the fact that he's going to bring down prices. That was the thing. I mean, all these issues with all these cases and all these problems, people just kind of said, all right, we don't care as long as you bring down prices.
Right.
So he said, you know what? We're bringing down prices. That's what we're going to do. We're going to bring down prices. Well, this week they interviewed him, especially after winning Time's Man of the Year. And now he's saying, well, okay, maybe not really bring down prices. we're gonna try and bring it. A lot of politicians do this. They say, well, we're going to make this food this price. As we well know from being in the Philippines. But that was his big thing, was he was going to bring prices down. And now that he's in, he's like, well, this is really hard to do. Maybe we won't actually bring down prices.
Wow.
So I was really surprised. Yeah. I was surprised to hear him say that. But I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of issues that are going to come up with these tariff wars. I mean, they're still going back and forth on whether, he says the day he gets in, they are going to slap these tariffs on everybody. And then everybody is saying, well, you do that. Here's what we're going to do. And then everybody's going to lose. And even though they say that, he's like, well, I'm doing it anyway. Right. And if he does that, the prices of everything is going to go up and up and up. So all that, Biden brought prices down a little bit, but if they do those tariff things, I mean, the prices could go through the roof. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see what he does in the first week, because that's what he says he's going to do. He's going to put these tariffs on Canada and Mexico and China. So I guess we're all going to wait to see what happens, and then let's see how much the stock market goes up.
This is not far away.
After that,
it's like a month away.
January 20th, and we will decide. We will see what happens when Trump takes office. And here again, I may eat my words, but I don't think so. Yeah. But we will see. But in that case, speaking of things we need to eat, we're out of time. We've eaten up all our time today. But thank you so much for joining me, Eric LeCain, and 𝗪cie𝗿𝗋𝗱 here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and Radio Bandito TV. Now, we will be back again next week, so please join us then, and we'll be talking about more stories going on around the world, something that interests you, hopefully interests is everybody. We can learn something together. So until then, Nara, we will see you next week. We'll see you next week. Everybody be safe out there, and we'll see you then.
The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.